What I'm going to do is start off with some of this onion. And that's good. I like onion, so it might be a little bit too much for some people, but for me, that works fine. And these are just some leftover veggies that I had from another dish. And so definitely don't want to overdo it with the tomato. Just because the thing is, like, if you put too much of this, it will make the bacon soggy. And I like my bacon a little bit crispy when I am making these breakfast tacos. And so here you have the onion and the tomato. All right, so the next thing I'm going to do is turn on the stove. And have about a tablespoon of butter in here. And this is going to be for the veggies, so I'm just going to kind of let that melt. And the thing is, you can just cook these in the pan and just set them off to the side. You're going to reintroduce them into the bacon and eggs. The reason I do this separately from this, from where I'm going to put the bacon, is just because if you put the bacon and the eggs, or the bacon with the veggies, then what you're going to get is soggy bacon. And like I mentioned earlier, I like the bacon kind of crispy, so that's what I'm going to do. That's how I'm going to do that, or why it is that I do this. And so I'm just going to get a few pieces of bacon. I'm making this for the family, so. And I'm just going to go ahead and cut the bacon here alongside the veggies. Usually, if you're going to use the veggies raw, you don't want to mix the bacon and the veggies together. But because it's all going to be cooked, it's all going to be mixed together later. You can do this cross contamination because you're going to cook it at a high temperature, and it will kill whatever bacteria you are, that would cause a cross contamination. And so right now I hear the butter in the pan starting to sizzle. So it's an indicator that it's about a good time to start throwing in the veggies. And so I'm going to start with onion just because onion takes a little bit longer to cook than the tomatoes do. And I just cleaned the counter, so I'm just going to go ahead and put that in there. All right, so now we got that going. And what I'm going to do now is turn on the pan for the bacon, let that get a little bit hot. And for this, I'm going to use just some cooking spray. The bacon will create its own grease, and so you have to strain it along the way. But I don't want to add anything else except the cooking spray because, as I mentioned earlier, the bacon will give you some grease. All right, so I just washed my hands, and now I'm going to put the bacon in here. And so here we go with that. And I just kind of want to break it apart just so it doesn't clump up and cook together. And so what you can do is actually store this bacon like in a cup or a bowl and just use it from time to time if you need some kind of bacon grease or oil. Not the healthiest, but it does give the food a good flavor. And so this right here is a pretty quick meal, breakfast meal, or I guess you can have this any time of the day. But whoops, and I probably should have cut those a little bit more, but that's okay. Sometimes you get sidetracked and that happens, right? It's just go with the flow sometimes. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and give the onions a little flip here, and I see they're getting that nice brown color. So I am going to add the tomato. And it's all about preference, right? Whatever it is that you like, if you like more onion than you do tomato, or you don't like one or the other, just adjust to your taste. And as I always say, that's like the beauty of cooking is if you like the way it tastes, then go ahead and make it that way. I've altered so many different recipes just because I prefer one taste or a texture, or savory versus sweet. Just made so many different adjustments to recipes because that's just the way I prefer it, or my family prefers it, and so we do it that way, right? So I know some people get offended if you don't follow like a traditional recipe or something like that, but to each their own. All right, so I don't like to overcook my tomatoes and it gets like really watery, really liquidy. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and turn it off right there, and it'll still cook with the heat of the residual heat of that pan. See, it's still sizzling, even if it's not on the flame. Do not forget about that because you don't want to overcook things because of the residual heat, right? So what I'm going to do now is just let this bacon get a little bit crispy. Well, not a little bit, quite a bit more crispy. And while I do that, I am going to crack some eggs. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and crack some eggs. As always, just keep the pointy parts to the top. Put your thumb where you make the crack, and then just split them open. Hopefully, you don't get any eggshells. We'll see. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and do 5 eggs. And then I'm going to take this opportunity to wash my hands. All right, so my bacon is getting a little crispy. I like the texture of the crispy bacon. Some people don't like it that well cooked, and that's fine. Like I said, as long as you're not eating it raw, you should be okay. I do like the crispiness; kind of gives it a different texture from the eggs and the veggies, and so that's why I'm cooking it a little bit longer. And like I mentioned earlier, you can save the grease that you get from here and use it for cooking later. So it's been on high this whole time. I'm going to drop it down to close to medium, but still a little bit on the high side. So, so I don't burn the bacon, but I'm still getting it at a good temperature. And then when you add the eggs in there, if your pan is really hot, you're going to overcook the eggs. So it's good to kind of keep it to lower the temperature when you get to this point of your cook. And you see the bacon is browning nicely and crisping the way I like it. All right, so what I'm going to do right now is just strain some of this or drain some of this excess bacon grease. And this is the way I do it. It'd probably be better to use a bowl so there's more like room for you to pour it in there, but just make sure it's something that can handle the high heat. And if you have another way of straining things out of a pan, go ahead and do it that way. You know, to each their own. And but this is the way I like to do it. And so I'm going to go ahead and cook this a little bit. There's still a little bit of bacon grease in there because you don't want the eggs to start sticking. And so I'm going to lower this down to medium now. And so what I'm going to do next is just scramble up the eggs. And I'm going to put a little bit of pepper. I don't like adding salt to this because the bacon is already salty. Even though this is low sodium bacon, it still has a decent amount of salt. So I'm going to just put some pepper in there. All right. And so now I'm going to add the eggs to the bacon. And then let it cook a little bit. And the reason I haven't added the veggies yet, I'm about to, but I haven't done it yet just because I don't want the bacon to get more soggy than it needs to be. So I like to do that towards the end. The veggies are already cooked. And so, you know, you don't have to worry about that part. And again, it's really important to lower the heat because if I had kept it on high, these eggs probably would have, you know, started burning right away or sticking to the pan. And so the eggs are pretty close to being done now. So what I'm going to do is just dump in the veggies. Let them heat up a little bit because they have cooled down. And if you wanted to, you could add some jalapenos to this and make it spicy. But for now, or for me, this is what my family prefers. And so we're going to do it this way. I'm just going to add a little bit more pepper. I like my eggs peppery, so. And what I'm going to do now is turn off the heat. I still like it cooked a little bit more, but as I say, the residual heat is going to keep it cooking. And so you can turn it off when it gets close to being done. And again, your preference to your eggs. Some people like them super dry. Some people like them a little bit more moist, I guess. And so the next step is going to be just to heat up some tortillas, and that's what I will do right now. And I'm just kind of spacing it apart to let it all cook evenly, because when you have eggs in clumps, sometimes you'll break up a clump and you'll see that it's still like really wet inside of there. So that's not what I want for these breakfast tacos. All right, so now next step is to make some tortillas. All right, so now what I'm going to do is just heat up a tortilla. If you have a griddle or a pan that you like to do this on, you can do it that way. I'm just going to do it straight on the stovetop the way my grandma and mom used to do it. And so for this, I'm actually just going to make it to go because I'm making this for one of my family members that has to get to work soon. So, and this is something that I'll do in mornings before work if I just need to make a quick breakfast to go. And usually you don't want to flip it more than twice, but I always want to make sure it doesn't burn, especially around the edges. When you make it straight on the flame, you have to worry about the edges getting a little bit crisp, kind of like that. But I actually like this taste. It's not too burned, but just the flame touching the tortilla gives it a little bit extra flavor. And so here we go, right? And corn tortillas too, when they're on the stovetop, they cook a lot better than if they're like on a griddle, in my opinion. All right, so and then to roll a breakfast taco, you just kind of want to tuck this in right there so it doesn't spill out the bottom, kind of like a little protection. And then just kind of tuck it in like that and roll it. Looks like there's a little stray piece of bacon there. That's all right. And then just wrap it up like so, and then you have breakfast to go.